I don't think that we're going to rebuild Gaza the day after.
What do you think is going to happen?
Before we reach to the question of the day after, I need to understand how will the end of the war look like?
After $20 to $40 billion of damage is a pretty serious message.
It's nothing.
Why do you say that?
When it comes to ideology, any price is worthy. Whoever gives money to Gaza must be responsible for what comes out from this money. Egypt and Hamas decided that 65% of the goods to Gaza will come through Egypt.
Why 65? Where did that come from?
And who taxes the goods? Hamas, making an income of $700 million. September 11, started from Palestinians from Jenin. Actually, the nephew of Sinwar, the brain behind this operation in the war, his nephew died in Sinai under the flag of ISIS. Actually, the sons of Hamas and Pidge seniors were the ones who joined ISIS, and then they went back.
You're listening to the TRIBECAST at tribejournal.org.
But before we get there, evil. During this war, there was a mosque that was bombed. Let me find the name. And the mosque was bombed, and the name of the mosque was after a guy called Sheikh Abdullah Yusuf Azam. This is the guy. I said to me, Sheikh Abdullah Azam, that's a mosque called after him. Who is he? And then I realized that this is a sheikh that was born in a village near Jenin. And at the late 70s, he immigrated to Afghanistan. He was the father of modern jihad. And he walked in the market of Afghanistan and he bumped into who? Osama bin Laden. And he became his teacher. A Palestinian sheikh from Jenin that was actually bin Laden's teacher. What came out of this meeting? Do you know? Qaeda. Is it that guys that bombed, that did September 11? Is it all started from Palestinians from Jenin? Just a question, okay? He was the teacher. He's the father of modern jihad. And then afterwards, what happened when people looked at Al-Qaeda and said, come on, guys, you're not so radical. What was invented in the Middle East after Al-Qaeda that was a little bit way more radical? ISIS. So ISIS also walked in the Middle East and they reached to Egypt. And they bumped into who? Gazans that were Hamas, that left Gaza and spent some time in Egypt, and they fought holding the flag of ISIS in Sinai. And then Sisi came, and Sisi succeeded to fight back. He got some help from a certain entity.
When did they meet up? Like around what year?
I think during the Morsi regime in the Muslim Brotherhood. Okay. It started with Muslim Brotherhood, and then Hamas, and then Pidge, and then modern jihad, and then ISIS, Daesh, Al-Qaeda, and then ISIS was invented, and we heard the stories of ISIS all over the world, slaughtering, chopping heads of people. And then in Sinai was actually an island of terror that Morsi, as the Muslim Brotherhood president that was elected in Egypt after Mubarak, said, okay, that's in Egypt. That's not my problem. It's their problem. And then Sisi started to fight ISIS. We also did that. We had to close our borders with fences on the Egyptian border, with big, tall fences. And the only exit or the only hole in the wall was Gaza. That ISIS fighters that fought Egyptians actually used the tunnels into Gaza, and they get the medical treatment there in Gaza, all the trains, all the weapons that Hamas got. By the way, in Gaza, 36 hospitals. If you compare it per capita, it's a little bit way more than in any country that surrounds us, okay? And it's all from donations, from the international community, the majority, and the Arab world, some of it. But then Sisi succeeded to have a nice, good fight with ISIS in Sinai and succeeded to gain control. So what did the Gazans do? What did they do? They went back home. What is home? Gaza. Actually, the nephew of Sinwar Yahya Sinwar, Hamas leader in Gaza, the guy, the brain behind this operation in the war. His nephew died in Sinai under the flag of ISIS. Actually, the sons of Hamas and Page seniors were the ones who joined ISIS, and then they went back. Before I wrote this article, in March, the beginning of April 2021, you know what? Let me show it to you, if you don't mind. I wrote a post on my social media. I published a post. I was supposed to publish an article, but then I didn't have the time. So usually when I have no time for articles, I post posts on social media. When people say Hamas is ISIS, they are actually flattering Hamas.
ISISization of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
March 31st, 2022, right?
Yeah, March 31st, 2022. It's definitely trending now, and that's for sure. Hamas equals ISIS, yeah. Oh, that was you're saying you were the one that...
I don't care who's the one. I'm saying that
Oh, yeah.
I understood it a year and more before
Before they were beheading, before they were doing these atrocities, before they showed their true colors.
Yes. Actually, what came out of this combination from Gaza is what we've seen on October 7th. And it's pure evil. It's way more worse than Hamas is ISIS. Because they were ISIS already a year and a half before the events.
Why didn't anyone see this?
I don't know.
I'm sure it was spoken about. I mean, people, no?
People, prefer the characters that are, as we spoke before the interview, that are sexy, that look good, that have a lot of followers. So, okay, who is this guy that says Hamas is ISIS? Nobody will listen to him.
Well, I mean, the story that you just shared with us it's not private information. I mean, I'm assuming that there's people in Shabak, Mossad, in the government that are well aware of...
Everybody were aware to that, okay? It's not that I invented that. But what I want to clarify is that when people say Hamas is ISIS, they are actually flattering Hamas. What we need to find is a name.
You retract your statement because it was flattering to them. It actually gave them more legitimacy than they deserve.
Yes.
Interesting.
Because what came out on that Saturday,
right,
something way
worse. You think that was way worse? I mean, ISIS was not your friendly neighbors. I mean,
have you heard about a story that ISIS cooked a baby in an oven? Never. Maybe they butchered people.
I mean, they lit people alive on fire in cages and beheaded people,
but not like that.
Brutal ways. No,
I don't remember a story about 25 the ISIS guys raping a young woman and then chopping their organs.
Yeah.
And playing with it.
Let me ask you another couple questions there. There's two things I want to talk about before our time is up, which I think it's already up, and I appreciate this extra time you're giving us. But one of them is really understanding what's happening in Judea Samaria and the AKA West Bank, to really understand, because that does seem like it's like you mentioned before, I think like a time bomb almost, like it's something terrible is likely to happen there. And, but then I also want to talk about sort of the mechanics of rebuilding. So I have like three basic questions about Judea Samaria, and then I want to shift over to back to Gaza. The three basic questions are: why does COGAT? This is more like the mechanics of COGAT and how it works. Why does COGAT continue to employ Palestinian Authority operatives in sensitive positions?
Well,
there's no Palestinian Authority operatives employed by COGAT.
And COGAT, no. And civil administration, yes.
I thought civil administration is. So explain the difference between civil administration and COGAT, and then
COGAT is the headquarters of the civil administration in the West Bank, and also the DCL.
Like the umbrella? It's the umbrella, though, right?
It's the headquarters.
So
but all the authorities, the civil administrations are given by the commander of the Central Command.
That's the IDF.
Yes.
So why would they be employing Palestinian Authority operatives?
It's the same ones who were there even before the Oslo agreement, so they stayed there.
And what types of positions do they have?
Ask them. I haven't been there for many years, so you should ask them.
Okay. Why does COGAT have different enforcement policies for Jewish and Arab sectors? We spoke about it a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think that they have different policies. The policy is implemented by the government of Israel.
Well, I mean,
Any policy implemented by COGAT is a policy that is given by the government of Israel.
so why does the government have
That's the government.
That's not you. Okay. Yeah, well, maybe you have an inside
No,
understanding of that. How many Arabs are there in Area C at this time?
I assume 200,000
How does COGAT get this data?
from all the photos. See.
There's a department in COGAT that actually analyzes all the photos and counts the houses.
Yes.
Now, shifting back to Gaza, it's tough to really estimate the rebuilding. We're not getting into the complete idiocy of when someone calls it a open air prison, and then they don't allow refugees to leave in the time of war, and now they're going to probably come back and say we need $40 billion or something to rebuild the open air prison that they were complaining about. We're not going to get into that. That's not the question. The idiocy of that, right? If you're going to spend $40 billion or more, probably, who knows what it's going to be, to rebuild a city in the Gaza Strip, why would you do it where there are landmines? And, why would that be the location, first of all?
Of Gaza?
Yeah, like why? Like it's
I don't think that we have a choice.
It's destroyed. Like,
I don't think that we,
why would we rebuild? Why would all that foreign aid go to putting these Gazans back in what they were just complaining about and describing and characterizing as an open air prison? It doesn't make sense. Isn't it rewarding it the way you were saying before? It's like rewarding how they all get new houses, but it's an open air prison.
So what should Israel do?
Well, why isn't there more pressure being put on outside of Israel, like in Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, where there's already most of the refugee camps from UNRWA are already in existence. So if there's 1.2, 1.4, I think UNRWA's website says 1.4, but registered refugees living in Gaza, then they already have their UNRWA card. Like why not seek some other place for them to ride out the war? They literally have nowhere to live right now.
Like where?
Like the other refugee camps that are controlled by UNRWA.
In Jordan?
In Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon.
I will accept them. What do you want? Look, we can embrace policies as much as we like.
The largest refugee camp is a 10-hour in Jordan. Is a 10-hour bus ride away.
Again, we can embrace any policy that we want, okay? But the question is very simple. Do we want to risk the peace agreement with Egypt and Jordan? If we want to risk that, if we don't want to have peace anymore, okay, let's do it.
Oh, so you're saying that the answer you're giving is it would jeopardize the peace?
The answer is that we will jeopardize two things. One, actually more than that. One is the peace that we have with Jordan and Egypt for many, many years. Because that will be a line that I don't see any government in Israel that will cross that line. Two is the Western world, the United States, okay? That they would expect us not to lead another Nakba or Naksa or whatever that Hamas is actually doing in Gaza. Hamas brought it on their hands. And we cannot do whatever we want to do. We are dependent with our economy, with our needs, with our existence, with the United States, with some of the Western countries. So we cannot. If we would be Putin, yes, we could do whatever we want to do, but we cannot.
Okay,
and we have our values also.
We're rebuilding Gaza the day after.
I don't think that we're going to rebuild Gaza the day after.
What do you think is going to happen?
My problem with what is going on here is not the day after, because before we reach to the question of the day after, I need to understand, and this is what I really want to understand, is how will the end of the war look like? Okay? First of all, before we reach to the day after, how it's going to look? Are we going to conquer or take control over the corridor of the border between Gaza and Egypt? It's not happening. I expected that it will happen at the second week of the war, and it's not happening. It means what? That we don't really mean what we state? If you ask me, I think that one of the biggest problems is that the government of Israel is not taking a decision to control the Gaza Strip. And if we will not, again, operationally, okay, strategically, This is the only meaning of what I'm saying, okay? How can you win Hamas? How can you make Hamas collapse? How can you eliminate Hamas when the only way in and out, the access, is that border? So if you mean what you say, close the border. Be there. Send a division. Conquer Philidalphi, okay, the border between Gaza and Egypt, and then make sure that the underground tunnels would be eliminated. Maybe the Egyptians are doing a great job. I don't know, okay? But I will trust only on ourselves. Now, it's also a message to the people of Gaza. Just a minute, Israel. You are stating loud and clear that you will eliminate Hamas, that Hamas will collapse. But actually, who are the ones who are bringing food to us? Hamas. Who are the ones who bring medicine to us? Hamas. We see Hamas continue bringing their whatever they bring from the underground tunnels in Gaza and Egypt. So you don't really mean what you say, Israel. So why do you expect us to say no to Hamas? If Israel will want to win this battle, this war, we will have to send a clear message to the Egyptians, to Hamas, that we mean what we say. And then the pressure that everybody are talking about, this pressure of the IDF, will be effective. Where is the problem? The moment you don't do that,
$40 billion of damage, or $20 to $40 billion of damage, is a pretty serious message.
it's nothing.
Why do you say that?
When it comes to ideology, any price is worthy. Now, I want to be clear about that. Hamas led 4 rounds of escalation. 2008, 2012, 2014, May 2021. In 2021, they won. Okay? They won. If somebody thinks differently, I'm ready to argue. They launched rockets from Gaza.
Got away with it.
They launched rockets from
rewarded.
Lebanon,
Right.
Syria, riots on the peace border with Jordan, and riots in the mixed cities in Israel. And for the first time, they launched rockets to Jerusalem, the defenders of Al-Aqsa. It doesn't matter what we think. What matters is how the Arab world looks at them, and they won. On October 7th, you can read my lips, they defeated the strongest military in the Middle East. Not less than that. Okay? And in history,
In that battle on October 7th.
for them, they defeated us. Yes.
Right. And you're not referring to the months afterwards. You're talking about that particular battle. They overran the
Let me give you an example. Let's go to 73, the Yom Kippur War. Who won, Israel or Egypt? You know what? What does it matter? What do we think? They won. There is a museum of the 73 war, Yom Kippur War. Yes, eventually we eliminated them. But on their calendar, there is this celebration, the day of October 6th. And who won? Egypt. What was how they won? They surprised us. So what does it really matter what we think? What does it matter what really happened after? It's on their calendar, the great victory of October 6th, October 7th. It will be on the Palestinian calendar for generations. They succeeded to penetrate. They succeeded to conquer. They succeeded to kill, to butcher, to rape. They actually conquered kibbutzim in Israel for 8 and 10 hours. Hamas. Small, tiny Hamas. It's a defeat. It's in the eyes of the beholder. It doesn't matter what will happen after. You know, in Palestinian history and legacy, this is what we need to understand. There's the picture of Yasser Arafat. We spoke about Yasser Arafat at the beginning, right? And there's supposed to be another picture of Abu Mazen. They will throw Abu Mazen to the garbage of history.
That's
Abbas. And the second picture will be Yahya Sinwar, the hero. The muqawama, the resistance.
Okay.
That's the meaning of defeat.
Yep.
And we need to make sure that we do whatever we can do to eliminate this defeat.
And that's
To delete it.
And that's what the IDF is doing.
No.
Why do you say that?
Because to do it, what the IDF is supposed to do is to conquer Philadelphia, that border, to make sure that there are no tunnels there, to stop all humanitarian aid to Gaza, to stop even to bring food to Gaza, and to say a simple thing. We are controlling the Gaza Strip effectively. 2.1 million people effectively are under Israeli responsibility. This is the period of time until what we will understand what will happen in Gaza the day after. I'm talking about, as I said, the end of the war. And if you want to get food, if you want to get medicine, if you want to get water, release our people and continue with the IDF. This is the only understandable language to the people who did what they did on October 7th. And as long as we continue fighting according to our Western rules of engagement, we will not be able to achieve that. And this is what has changed since I wrote this article and until today.
Got it. Just to bring it back to the question about the day after, you're saying it really depends. Because it may be that what you just described will change, maybe, or probably it won't. And you're saying from where you're standing, it looks like the IDF has not decided to conquer Gaza.
The IDF
They've decided to destroy Gaza.
No. The IDF is not deciding. There is a government that should decide. Right. The IDF is a body that implements the government's decisions.
Fair enough. But the government has decided not to conquer Gaza. They've just decided to destroy Gaza.
The government of
Hamas
Israel decided to reach to achieve two goals. One is to free the
captives.
The captives, okay? And until now, the government succeeded to free only less than half. And I don't see any...
And number two?
Any another, let's say, achievement with that, any deal. And two is to make sure that Hamas will collapse.
By itself, an almost impossible task, because
it's possible.
It's an ideology.
You cannot delete the ideology, but you can make them collapse, that they will not be able to control.
From the statehood perspective.
If a Hamas policeman, or a group of Hamas policemen, allowing themselves in the northern part of the Gaza Strip to step outside dressed in uniforms with AK-47 and they are not dead in an instant, it means we are failing.
Fair enough. But if the IDF accomplishes the government's goal of dismantling Hamas, then the border becomes a moot point, right? Like they've gotten rid of the problem, so to speak, without having to conquer the entire Gaza Strip. And therefore, they're not the conquerors and occupiers, and they can work out some other administrative option.
I'm not talking about conquering the Gaza Strip. I'm talking about effectively controlling.
Well, an entire border
effectively control. An effective control.
You said Philadelphia is what you're claiming against. Why aren't they doing that? And
I don't know.
That would be entire border control.
Yes.
So by not doing that, it's not a siege. It's Egypt is party to the lack of movement ability by the Gazan residents. Yes. So but I'm raising it as a question. If they could theoretically dismantle Hamas as the governing body and the tunnels or whatever that entails, then that would achieve a goal. The goal that you're agreeing is the goal, which is to free. This is another trending.
But why isn't that
free
happening?
Gaza from Hamas.
But why is that happening?
So you're saying that can't happen unless the IDF blockades
will people. Not happen unless the IDF will implement or I don't know, conquer or control that border. Okay,
fine.
I don't make sure there will be no tunnels, and that yes, the meaning of that, the consequences will be that we will effectively control the Gaza Strip, and we will be responsible on the people of the Gaza Strip, and we will need to provide them food, medicine, medical treatment, and not Hamas.
Got it. So
until this body of the day after, and again, it can be the PA, Arab countries, the UN, I don't care.
You're fine with that.
I'm not saying I'm fine with it. I'm saying it doesn't matter who. Let's talk about it later. Until we get there, we need to make sure that Hamas have no abilities. Now,
why is inviting the PA to be the administrator?
I'm not inviting the
The
PA.
United States clearly wants the Palestinian Authority to run the place.
Okay.
The
So
other
they
nations of
want.
the world also want the Palestinian
Okay.
Authority to run. They want it to be Palestine. They're at war with Israel. So how does that solve the problem? It's like when a country is at war with you, and you just like take out their air force, but you leave their soldiers in place, or you take out their navy. But
if it's not them, so who will control Gaza? We don't want to conquer. I don't want to be the mayor again.
Well, that's what you're suggesting by.
No, I'm saying for a temporary situation until the body, okay, of the day after, and I don't know what body will that be, okay? What organization will that be? Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Bahrain? Will that be the P? I don't want to enter there, okay? I'm just saying that to win this war with Gaza, with Hamas, I want to see the first step. How will the Gaza Strip look like the day the war stops?
We could talk about that for a whole 10 hours, I'm sure, but mathematically, there's probably two possibilities, right? One, Israel wins and conquers and dismantles Hamas, and then there's a destruction in Gaza that has to be contended with, and people need a place to live. The other one is Israel loses and Hamas stays in power, and there's still the destruction that has to be contended with because people need a place to live.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're talking about rebuilding the destroyed cities,
I'm not saying that.
No, that's what I'm bringing the conversation to there. If you'll let me, that we've seen in the past. This is usually Qatar kicked in $500 million, Egypt kicked in $500 million for May 2021.
Okay, you are talking about the mechanism that I already started. I already started this mechanism. Okay, I'm in the middle of a big work on that with some institutes.
Okay, so that's what I want to understand.
Whoever gives money to Gaza must be responsible for what comes out from this money. Okay, for example,
meaning what? Like, first of all, just give me COGAT is the administrator of the rebuilding, right?
Not COGAT.
Who is it?
No, not COGAT.
Like, what is
meaning Qatar will give $500 million. Okay, there will be international, not Qatar, internationals, foreigners that will be in Gaza and make sure that any dollar that enters to Gaza for I don't know what will be checked that the money went to the right cause. And we will need minimum generation. We will need minimum a generation to make sure that the educational system in Gaza is changed.
That hasn't happened during the war. Like Hamas has stolen all of the aid that has gone in there. Like that hasn't happened while the war is going on. Why will it happen afterwards?
That's why I said we need to make sure that we conquer Philadelphia, and the aid that comes to Gaza will not be given by Hamas. It will be given by Israel.
That's COGAT.
That doesn't matter who is it.
That is the function of COGAT.
No.
I thought COGAT controlled everything that goes in.
Not really. COGAT is an organization that used to be in the past civil administration in Gaza. Now, they don't have the abilities to do that. They will need to create an organization, okay?
This job is just too big for...
Of course it's too big.
2014, when you were at COGAT, so then...
I did it with the international community. I did it with UNRWA.
So I said, I want to hear about that. I want to understand the mechanisms and
The mechanism is very simple. The mechanism then was that we need to push aid to Gaza so we will get legitimacy from the Western world to continue fighting. So actually pushing aid to Gaza gives you legitimacy to fight.
But what's the Israeli government's role in rebuilding Gaza in 2014?
It was a mechanism of inspection that we wrote with the UN and with the PA. And according to that mechanism that we coordinated, building materials enter to Gaza, making sure that it will be used to reconstruct the houses and not for tunnels. But it was effective from the Israeli side. It was not effective from Egypt because the mechanism was only from Israel to Gaza. From Egypt, everything entered freely. So what
did it accomplish?
Nothing. Eventually,
meaning anything they wanted, they could get in from...
Exactly.
But the aid had to go through, or the aid also came in from Egypt?
What came from Israel was checked, and we made sure that it goes to Gaza.
But not all the aid had to come through Israel.
Exactly.
So basically, Egypt, our number one ally, who's blocking the Philidalphi corridor there. is complicit.
Implementing the three monkeys policy that I told you. I don't see, I don't hear, I don't talk. It means on the border, we will make sure that everything is according to what is agreed upon. But
So-
on the ground, what can we do? Exactly like you Israelis, exactly like Mubarak before us, tunnels are operated.
So you're saying that
That's why
Well, what
I'm
about
saying,
vendors? What-
this is why I'm saying that Philadelphia must be controlled by
Gotcha.
Israel.
Okay, so now what about vendors? You know, like someone who's supplying the glass, who's supplying the copper for the the electricity or whatever, who's supplying the cement and the rebar, the steel for the building.
Israelis and Egyptians. What comes from Israel is inspected. What came from Egypt is uninspected.
So how does that work? It's like Israeli companies are competing with Egyptian companies to have the contract. It's a 40 billion. This is much bigger than that one was like a half a billion, maybe a billion.
When I worked at
May
Nesher,
2021, it was like a $500 million.
when
This
I
is
worked
exponentially.
when I worked at Nesher, so I sold cement to my clients in Gaza. Okay, as the company.
This is after 2016 when you had left the.
It was from 2017, 18, 19, 20. Okay. We sold cement to clients in Gaza, and then they said that we don't need your cement, it's expensive. We have it cheaper. From where? From Egypt.
Got it. That's enormous.
Yeah.
That's such a nuanced thing that no one talks about. Who's making money?
I told you, Hamas and Egypt is. But I
okay. So
told
let's
you
say
that.
1 second. So okay, fine. So let's say
I told you that Hamas and Egypt decided that
let's say hypothetically speaking.
65%.
Okay, 1 second. Let's say hypothetically speaking, there's no corruption in the Israeli government. There's no lobbying and smearing and
Maybe there is.
let's just say hypothetically there's not.
Okay.
Let's say everyone is 100% upright and no one does anything that's not transparent.
Mm-hmm.
What you're saying is that unless Egypt does that too, right? Then essentially it's a game of who's gonna.
That's why I'm saying
We
again.
have to control
We have to control the border. Yes. This is exactly what I'm saying. Because the moment.
That's an important. I think the rationale behind it needs to be fleshed out more. Why else are you saying?
This is what I'm trying to explain also on my interviews at I-24. Without taking the control on the Philadelphia border, we can kill 50,000 terrorists.
And it's not going to do a thing.
And it will do nothing because in 10 years it will be back.
Here, the Egyptian government, who's supposed to be guarding that Philidalphi corridor, is almost, because of, I'm assuming there's similar lobbying things that happen in Egypt, right? Most governments are like that. There's lobbyists and there's large corporations.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming that, they would be able to influence the government to, like you're saying, look the other way.
I just told you half an hour ago that Egypt and Hamas decided that 65% of the goods to Gaza will come through Egypt.
Why 65? Where did that come from?
And who taxes the goods? Hamas, making an income of $700 million from all the goods that will enter from Egypt to Gaza.
So Egypt, our number one ally, is incentivized to work with Hamas.
Egypt is an ally to Hamas. Egypt is also an ally to Israel. And Egypt will always do what is only good for Egypt. That's Egypt.
Why does Israel look the other way on this?
What can you do?
What do you mean, what can you do?
I'm asking you, what can you do?
Take the Philidalphi Corridor.
Okay. That will risk the peace agreement with Egypt.
So then there's a financial deterrence. In other words, if
you are saying something very simple, but it's very complicated. Take over Philadelphia. This is what I'm saying. But the moment we do that, we jeopardize the peace agreement with Egypt.
And then Egypt's going to say, "That's our money. Like we have 62% of the business in Gaza."
It's not only about the money; it's also about how the Arab world looks at them. This is
because they're collaborating with the Jews.
One, and two. What was the first action made by the Egyptians? When the war started, they blocked the border. They made sure that not even one Gazan would be able to go. Why? They stated, we want to make sure that Israelis will not create another Nakba. But actually, they understood that the disaster will start when Gaza will start crossing to Sinai.
Yeah, they would have 1 million refugees to deal with.
Exactly. So it also
Hamas could have snuck out the back door there, no?
Hamas, yes, but they also, I'm sure that they have some tunnels underneath that border.
Yeah, for sure.
That's why, if we want to reach our goals, I will say it again, the IDF will have to get an order from the government of Israel to take over the Philidalphi border and control effectively the Gaza Strip to achieve the two goals. Otherwise, we will not achieve them.
What do you think the top?
And I hope I'm wrong.
What do you think the top three reasons that Israel is not doing that?
One, the peace agreement, that nobody wants to jeopardize it. Two, there's no plan for the day after. Three, Israel doesn't want to take responsibility on 2.1 million people. Because the ones who are sending the aid now is the all Arab world to El Arish, and from El Arish to Gaza. Just imagine if Israel would have to send the 200 trucks a day to Gaza from your tax money and my taxes. Israel doesn't want to take responsibility over the 2.1 million people in Gaza. Simple.
Okay.
And Israel doesn't want the PA to be in Gaza because Israel understands that if it will happen, they will have to pay a price for that in the West Bank. Settlements.
Okay, great segue to the West Bank. Now, pre-October 7th to today, what's shifted? Like
we're in the West Bank?
You know, it's a two-state solution. Everyone's talking about it.
No, we were in a situation of a three-state solution. Okay? Actually, what is happening now with this war, this is why the United States, the Biden administration, and Europe are so anxious to make sure that it will be the PA, because this obstacle that I mentioned at the beginning, that we are facing a three-state solution, if Israel will implement the goal of making sure that Hamas will not be able to control the Gaza Strip, actually there will be an opportunity for the first time since June 2007 to deal with one entity. When the United States, when President Biden landed here, and he saved Israel in a way, okay? Come on, this is not obvious that the Fifth Fleet entered to the Mediterranean.
Well, they also took away a lot of the armaments.
It was an open check. It's like President Biden said, I'm going to back you, I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, but it's an open check. And I said then, I think the second week or the third week of the war, that President Biden will demand that somebody will pay for what he did. And the payment is the two-state solution, the PA in Gaza, and if Mahmoud Abbas will be asked to go to Gaza, he will have demands in the West Bank, and this is something that this current government is not willing to pay.
Speak that up.
I think the demand will be to remove settlements, to give land in Area C. I don't know, maybe some payments in Jerusalem, maybe Allenby Bridge, okay? Some
status quo. I mean, they're taking the land anyways, right?
Let's not enter to that, okay? They will want to have more officially, okay?
Oh, more official.
Way more officially.
Yeah.
That it will be, I don't know, a different agreement.
A state, an actual state.
This is the current government understand that this will be the price, so they are not willing to pay.
So you think that's a real risk?
The moment you hear the United States and the European countries talking about a two-state solution, this is the meaning.
Well, I mean, talking about it and actually, everyone backing Palestine as a state and welcoming them into the UN and whatnot, it are two different things.
The Palestinian Authority will not become a state unless they take responsibility. And unfortunately, they are not taking responsibility.
They're not in a position to do that. They cannot manage their own people.
Doesn't matter. They can. I'm saying that they need to take responsibility. They should not be dependent on aid. They should invest, stop with the corruption. They should educate their kids from the kindergarten. They should stop with the incitement. They should change the books. We will need minimum 2 generations. Okay, it means 50 years to start talking about a future Palestinian state.
Last question, and thank you for all this time. The workers what's the stats and facts? Like, you gave us a lot of information about the workers from Gaza after May 2021 that were allowed to work in Israel and make money and bring $500 million to Gaza. What do those numbers look like when we're talking about the Arabs living in Judea Samaria, the West Bank?
140,000 workers who worked until the war in Israel. You can just calculate the money. And 32,000 in the settlements working in the settlements in the West Bank.
Jewish settlements, you're saying?
I'm talking about Jewish
The
settlements.
Arabs were working in Jewish settlements.
Palestinians, not Arabs, Palestinians
Okay.
from the West Bank who worked in the settlements. Actually, almost at all the settlements, when you heard a new settlement is built, it's by Palestinian workers.
When you say Palestinian, you're saying Jenin, Ramallah, like residents of, not the Arabs on Area C,
I'm
but
talking
rather.
about the residents in Area A, B, and C.
Oh, you're saying any Arab is de facto a Palestinian?
I'm saying that whoever lives in the West Bank, not all of them, that are Palestinian Authority residents, they can live in Area A, B, or C, it doesn't matter. If they work in Area C in the settlement or they work in Israel, they enjoy the benefit of an Israeli salary, okay? There are also Arab Israelis who live in Area A. Okay.
And Jerusalem. I mean, Jerusalem has
I'm talking
Palestinian
about
refugees or even just regular Arabs that live there.
Yes, that is true. I'm
Right.
talking about Arab Israelis, not East Jerusalem Arab Israelis. I'm talking about Arab Israelis who live in Kalkilia, okay, in Area A. I'm talking about Arab Israeli students who study in Palestinian universities, in Jenin, in Nablus, okay?
Okay.
I'm not talking about Palestinians. I'm talking about Arab Israelis.
Okay, so how many of
thousands?
And that's all stopped because of the war.
The Palestinians who worked in Israel stopped, but the Arab Israelis who study in universities in the West Bank is still there.
Is the government, I think the government opened the doors to some of the workers there. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that the government should be creative and take some steps or measures to make sure that the tents in the West Bank and it's reaching to this boiling point that I hope that will not happen, that the weapons that the Palestinian Authority holds with the battalion that they have will not be turned against us. So we need to find the right solutions and the right way. I don't know what is it, okay?
You think that's a very likely scenario? Or?
I think this is a scenario that is becoming likely as day goes by. You know, it started in Jenin, if you remember, a year and a half ago, all these huge operations, and then it moved to Nablus. Now it's in Tulkarem, and a month ago it's in Kalkilia, and then in Hebron. So it comes from the north, and it's like a storm that moves to the south, and we need to put an end to that. I know that we need to digest a little bit that just a minute, but it's our enemies. As you mentioned, we are at war situation with them.
Aren't the majority of Palestinians living in the West Bank
as if I will refer to the survey in the West Bank, yes, the people of the West Bank that answer the survey support, 80% support.
What are your thoughts on that, just by intuition from your experience of being so deep?
People love the heroes. Who is the hero? I made this build up at the beginning. Mahmoud Abbas, who is he? Nothing. What did he achieve? Nothing. Who are the ones who really achieved something? Hamas. Who are the heroes? Hamas. Who defeated the strongest military in the Middle East? Hamas. No, we also love heroes. If there will be elections, we will go and vote for who? We also want to see that our leaders are our heroes. So who are the heroes in those eyes? Hamas and Page.
Did the polls surprise you?
No. If generations are educated on the needs of incitement, that there is no existence to a Jewish state, that we are only here temporarily, so what do you expect? And they will not support the events. If they will start educating the kids to accept the other, to believe in peace, and I want to see it, okay? I want to see inspectors from the international community, from the Western world with Israel, entering to schools, opening the books, making sure that they teach their kids that we are not a devil with a tail, that we are actually the Jewish state that will exist here, and we are going nowhere. And the moment they will start do that, then I will start maybe thinking a little bit different.
How far away is that?
At least minimum 1 generation.
1 generation.
Minimum.
And it's probably going to get worse before it gets anywhere close.
Before it gets better, it will get worse, yes.
So it's almost as if this is inevitable. This war in the West Bank will be inevitable.
I've said a few years ago that this big war between us and the Palestinians is inevitable, and we will need probably to go through this war.
Are the settlements prepared?
I hope so. I hope so.
Everyone's experiencing it from their perspective. And if I lived in one of these settlements and I would see that the Arab neighbors are getting a free ticket to build right up to my property line, and I am getting knocked down when I try to do it. I'm not getting approvals for my kids to build houses in my own community. If I was in those settlements, I would be pretty nervous that the government has abandoned me. What are your thoughts on that?
There are three types of settlements. There are settlements who are meant to create security. There are settlements that are meant to create strategy. And there are settlements that are there because of ideology. Okay? The ones that are located in the Jordan Valley, for example, it's strategy. It means a statement of the state of Israel that in any future scenario, those settlements will stay there forever. It will be a corridor because we cannot rely on our Jordanian friends. So they will continue providing us this strategic depth that we mentioned earlier. The settlements that are located on the western back of the West Bank, like Alfei Menashe, like Avnei Chefetz, okay, for example, it's on the western back of the West Bank, are settlements that are supposed to stay there as fists on high ground.
Gush Etzion.
Gush Etzion also. It's also on the western back, okay? As fists on high ground. It means in the future, if somebody will decide that there will be a future Palestinian state, so we will make sure that this state, if it will become a terror entity, if they will engage us, they will not engage us on road number 6, but it will be on those fists on high ground.
I mean, that scenario sounds awful. It sounds like the people who are living there,
I'm saying if.
their whole purpose is to essentially be the front line.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And if that's the case, and the Palestinian Authority is at war with Israel, why are we having any doubts of whether or not we should be fortifying and building 100,000 units?
I'm not saying that we have doubts or not. I'm just saying
I'm saying 5,000 units was a shocker to the world and a shocker to some of the Israeli society. Right? Why is there not 100,000 new units approved?
Because nobody in Israel, there's no even one leader that is brave enough to draw a map. Okay, and that map will say, this is the state of Israel for the following 200 years, how it will look like. With Area C, without Area C, with the settlements, without the settlements, with the Jordan Valley, without the Jordan Valley, with Gaza, without Gaza. Find me one Israeli leader that will draw such a map, and that will be his campaign. You will find zero leaders doing that.
He'd probably get all the votes.
I don't know.
The dancing that the current government does around the real issues is creating an even more, like, what you want to call it, the right wing.
There is no government that existed, or as I can see in the, let's say, following years, that will be able to draw a map that will say, this is how the state of Israel will look like 200 years from today.
Why?
Because we have limits. We have limits of the international community, of the Arab world, of the normalization. Too many things to take in consideration. But the real thing that should happen is, yes, we should be honest with ourselves and draw that map and say to the entire world, this is the state of Israel. This is what we will die for. And there will be an end to many, many, many questions. Right, left, wing. I think we can put it in there, but I don't see that happening. I think it will be our desire to see something like that. And then, let's say if we will have no Western, let's say if we will not, if we will get legitimacy of the entire world telling us, you know what, guys, draw the map, okay? How do you think Israel would look like? And the ones who will draw that map will go to elections, and if they will get the majority, so okay, so this is the majority, and we will know how to invest our money. For, I don't know, should we, for example, should Israel continue investing money in isolated settlements? People will tell you yes, and others will tell you no. But if you will have a map that you can draw exactly How would you want to see your country 200 years from today? So you will know where to invest your money in a long-term process of investment. For example, if we will say the Jordan Valley will forever be a Jewish-Israeli border, okay, so let's invest money there, millions, to make sure that it will be strong enough.
Are they defendable borders? The 67 armistice lines. Let's say Jerusalem could be carved out of there. Is it a defendable border?
Defendable it is. I'm not sure that it will be effective.
After seeing what happened in Gaza when they had their own state, is the West Bank as a Palestinian state a defendable border?
What I'm saying is something else. We tried many, many things. Okay? When I say we, it's not only Israel, it's like all of us. And until now, it all failed. My fear is that because of the fact that everything failed, it will bring us to a disaster, and the disaster will be a one-state solution.
Speak that up.
No, we don't have time for that.
And join us next time.
A one-state solution.
You got to leave them on a cliffhanger.
A one-state solution will be a disaster for us. Okay.
You think so?
Yes, we have to avoid from that. And as time goes by and we do nothing, we're actually promoting a one-state solution. The right wing in Israel.
It's going to grow. It's growing.
The right wing in Israel is actually
gaining momentum a lot.
Leading this process to a one-state solution.
And they're gaining a lot of momentum because nothing, as you said, everything else has failed.
Exactly. But this is exactly what the Palestinians also want.
Well, I'm just curious why.
But this is what the Palestinians also want. What? They also said
they want a one-state solution.
Yes.
100%. I think people have woken up. I think October 7th was a very strong potch.
When I say a one-state solution, I mean also Gaza and the West Bank.
I understand.
It means they will become a majority.
Who will become a majority?
The Arabs.
That's an interesting. This is a whole other. No, it's a very interesting.
That's the risk.
Conversation.
That's the risk. Because when you say one-state solution, this is a Jewish state, right? And what will happen to the Arabs?
I understand.
They will vanish somehow?
No, I understand.
They will become the civilians.
I think we should have this conversation.
Okay. This is exactly what the Palestinians say now. We tried to make peace with you, we failed. We tried to make war with you, we failed. Okay? So let's go back to what used to be in the past before 48, Palestine. And that's a disaster.
At Tribe Journal, we tell the untold. You can find more great content like this at tribejournal.org. Thanks for being with us.